Hello, I'm Susan Enderson. Welcome to Janome Live. Today I'm going to be playing with my circle stitcher and decorative stitches. This is Janome's circle stitcher. Now it does look kind of odd, but you have a place on the left side that's going to hold your fabric. You have a measurable guide, and then you have the little piece that goes into the quick set and the screw that holds it in place onto your stitch plate. So remove your stitch cover, place it directly over top, and then screw the little screw that comes in. You will probably need your screwdriver with this as well, just to tighten it down, because you don't want it to be slipping around while you're stitching. Now, over on the left-hand side, you have a small little lock that will press down and will unlock. Then you can slide the piece that will hold your fabric, that's the pin, anywhere along the guide that you want to. The numbered marks are 1 inch apart. They give you also down to 1/4 inch measurements. Makes it a little easier. But that will actually push it back up and it locks it into position so it doesn't slide anymore. Then you can remove the cover or safety cover for the pin that is going to hold your fabric in place. I also like using my F2 or open toe applique foot. This gives me more visibility, especially when I'm ending my design. My setup for today, I've just chosen or pre-cut a 10-inch square of cotton. I've also used a little best press to get it nice and smooth and remove any of the wrinkles. I'm going to mark my centers so I will know the starting and stopping point for my stitching, and so that I know where to place the pin on my circle stitcher. This can also be used to do a embroidery in the center of your square if you so desire. One last thing I did was I did put a piece of fusible tearaway to the back of my square just to give it more stability. You're going to find if you don't do that, you will have some rippling of the fabric as it feeds through the machine. Now unlock and slide your holder. I started over to about 2.5 inches from the needle and then lock it into position. Uncover the pin and slide your fabric down over top, placing the center over top of the pin itself. Then cover the cap back over top. This is to prevent yourself from being hurt or anything else being caught on the pin. Like I said, about 2.5 inches from the center. At your machine, you can choose just about any design you like. I do try to stay away from too many stitches that go in reverse to create the pattern. And if you're going to be doing a satin stitch, you may want to reduce the total width down. You can also adjust the pattern length as well. I always start my stitching on one of the crossbars that I drew to find my center. This gives me a better reference for when I come around to the back side so that I can join my stitch pattern accurately. You may need to hold the little button on top of the pin on occasion because it does have a tendency to wiggle back and forth, especially if you've got a reverse stitch in the design you've chosen. Again, try not to choose too many that go backwards to create the pattern. You're going to want to slow your stitching as you approach the beginning of your stitch pattern to make sure that you're going to line up correctly. Once I've come back around to that first pattern, I'm going to use my reverse button by touching it to lock the stitch off. Now, without removing my fabric from the pin, I'm going to loosen the lock on my slide, slide my pin and my fabric over. I like to get it so my presser foot is just outside of the first row of stitching and lock it back into place. Then select your next pattern and stitch your next row. You can continue this process as many times around as you desire, creating all kinds of fun decorative patterns or combinations of patterns even. Just remember to use that reverse button to lock your beginning or ending stitch. There are a lot of fun combinations you can get or create by doing the circle stitcher. If you need to remove the fabric from the pin, do mark it either with a washout or disappearing marker. Now, the hole will be there, but it could close up if you manipulate the fabric too much. What I'm going to do with this piece now that I've been playing with it, I'm going to take a piece of batting, just a lightweight batting, and make sure I cover all the stitching, and another piece of fabric that I'm going to lay on the back side of my design panel. Then I'm going to replace it back onto my circle stitcher, and we're going to finish off the edge. I'm using a needle now just to poke all the way through that new fabric and the batting, keep it in place while I manipulate it to get it back under my presser foot. It just keeps things aligned, and then put it right back on top of the pin. Remove that needle because we don't want to stitch through that. I started this next design thinking, okay, this will be a great way to finish this off, and then I'll trim the fabric close. Then decided it was a little too intricate, didn't want to be bothered with it. So I went ahead and finished the design going around the outside. Be sure to check with your local dealer to get the circle stitcher that's right for your machine. If the design you've chosen doesn't quite end exactly at the end of the design, when you come back around to meet the beginning of the row, don't panic. You can use your reverse button on your machine simply by touching it, and it will lock wherever you happen to be. To hide or to cover up where the design doesn't quite match, you can, again, cut the design apart on that line, cover it over with another stitch, or continue stitching slightly into the next one so it looks like it may be just a slightly elongated design, and then hit the reverse button briefly to allow it to lock the stitching in the middle. I came back and did a straight stitch around the outside edge to give me a cutting line. Make sure you lock that guide back into place. And we're just going to do a straight stitch all the way around the outside. Now remove the project from the pin and go ahead and clip right along that line. That gives you that nice edge to go ahead and cut. Then we'll come back and overstitch the edge to finish it off. I place the project back on the pin. I'm going to slide my fabric right up against the needle, and I've selected the satin stitch from my machine, and I've narrowed it to 3 millimeters. Now remove the project from your machine, and it's ready to use. With that extra batting and the backing on it, it's now made a perfect coaster for my mug. I like to use the circle stitcher for doing quilt blocks and doing all decorative stitches. Great way to add some interest. But then what do you do with the circles you have left over? Or maybe you'd want to do something a little decorative along the side of your project. Split the pattern that you've already stitched along those cross lines that you created when you first created your fabric. And we're going to put them back together to create a whole new design. I'm going to match up the stitching on the different blocks to give myself a wave effect. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam to piece the blocks together. Using my rotary cutter, I'm going to trim off the extra, giving me a nice straight piece. So I'll be trimming from corner to corner on my blocks. Now just flip the piece around and trim off the extra on the other side. and I've just made borders. And I can do as many of these as I need to complete my project. Then the borders actually match the block. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again next time on Janome Live.